welcome to another episode of Wellbeing at Work, a podcast by Workplace Options, a Telus Health company. I'm Sarah Wood, Vice President and General Manager of Emerging Solutions at WPO, and today I'm joined by Marianne Khlat, a clinical psychologist at WPO, to discuss the far-reaching impact of disruption on families across the Gulf region and what parents, caregivers, and the support systems around them can do to make sense of their experiences, navigate uncertainty, and begin to rebuild a sense of stability as everyday life gradually resumes. After more than a month of distance learning, students across the UAE are finally returning to the classroom, filling campuses once again with the sounds of laughter and conversation. Yet while this marks a welcome shift for families reeling from constant disruption, for many, a lingering sense of unease remains. Questions about safety, concerns for children's well-being, and uncertainty about what lies ahead are still weighing heavily on families as regional conditions continue to change. Now, welcome, Marianne. I'm so glad you joined me today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Marianne, I was wondering if you could tell us more about the common issues coming up for parents and their children as they move through this latest transition, and how this extended period of disruption has taken a toll on family well-being.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Sarah. One of the things I kind of keep hearing from families right now is the sense of things are supposed to feel normal again, so why don't they? And I think that's really the heart of what we need to talk about today. Just because schools have reopened doesn't mean everything that happened over the past weeks have been erased. Families have been through a lot, the uncertainty, the disrupted routines, the worry, and that just doesn't disappear overnight because the school is running again.
Mm-hmm.
For children, what we often see after a period like this is changes in behavior that can catch parents off guard. Younger kids might become clingier, have more meltdowns, or suddenly struggle to sleep again. Older kids and teenagers might seem more irritable, more withdrawn, or having a harder time focusing. And a lot of parents see this and think, what am I doing wrong? But the truth is, these are really normal responses to an abnormal situation. Children process stress through their behavior, and what we're seeing is simply that. For parents themselves, the weight is just as real. So there are so many what ifs still floating around. Will school stay open? Is my job secure? Is my child actually okay? And that constant low level worry is exhausting, even when nothing is actively going on around them. So, and something I really want to name because I don't think it gets said enough is that a lot of parents right now are experiencing something that feels very much like grief. This feeling of I couldn't fully protect my children from this. I couldn't control what was happening around us. And that is a real and valid feeling we're seeing around us. And this deserves to be acknowledged rather than being brushed aside.
Those are all amazing points. I'm sure that parents and caregivers feel inadequate and afraid. They're stressed, they're worried. And then, of course, those concerns about changes in the child's development and children's behavior that they're seeing at home just adds an additional layer of stress.
Yeah.
What you're describing really highlights how much families are still carrying right now and how these experiences can compound over time. I also wanted to ask you, in regards to the population of the UAE, I know that this is the first time a lot of families have ever dealt with a crisis of this scale. There's a high expat population there, and maybe a lot of families haven't had to navigate physical safety concerns before. Now, for those who might have evacuated or temporarily relocated during this period, how has that had an impact on their overall well-being? And what are some of the challenges that they're facing now as they try to return and reestablish a routine?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, especially discussing the population we're talking about in the UAE. So, the UAE has such a large expat community. And for so many of those families, this was generally the first time they'd ever been through something like this. And they experienced it far from their home countries, far from their parents, their siblings, close friends. And that kind of isolation adds a whole other layer to an already stressful situation. So, for families who did temporarily leave, whether that was a planned evacuation or just a decision made in the moment out of fear, coming back hasn't necessarily felt like the relief they expected. A lot of families have described to me this feeling of being on edge even after returning, almost waiting for something else to happen. And that makes complete sense. When we've been in a situation that felt unsafe, our minds and bodies don't just switch off that alertness the moment we're back home. That takes a lot of time. For children, especially actually, that return can feel disorienting. So, they've slept in different places, they've missed school, they were online, they've possibly seen their parents stressed or scared for the first time in this kind of situation. And even if they're too young to fully grasp what's happening around them, they pick up on all of it. So, coming back to their rooms, their schools, their routine, as much as it's a good thing, it can still stir up anxiety rather than immediately bringing comfort to them. Additionally, for expat families, there's also this bigger, harder question sitting in the background. Do we stay? Is this still the right place for us? Living with that kind of uncertainty makes it really difficult for them to fully settle back and rebuild also based on what happened as well. So it's hard to invest emotionally in stability when part of you isn't even sure that the stability is going to last.
Mhm.
So I always say returning home is the beginning of the recovery, not the end of needing support.
That's a great point. That's a wonderful point. And I think just really acknowledging that that month, more than a month did in fact happen. And
Mhm.
so not trying to ignore it and not trying to move past it, but really trying to move through, connect with your family, connect with your children, and try to work through that is so important.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, we've talked about some of the challenges that families are facing during this time, and they are immense. Now, I'd like to turn a little bit to what can be done to help. For parents and caregivers and their families, what are some practical resources or strategies that they can use to protect their well being in the face of uncertainty?
Hmm. I really love this question because I think what a lot of families need right now isn't necessarily something complicated. It's actually some fairly simple things that can be done consistently that's going to help them protect their well being. The first thing I always come back to is routine. When everything around us feels uncertain, routine becomes our anchor. So it doesn't have to be rigid or perfect. It's more about having predictable touch points throughout the day. A consistent wake up time, a shared meal, a bedtime routine that looks the same almost every night. And these things signal to a child's nervous system and honestly also to adults too that the world is okay, there's structure and a sense of safety. It sounds simple, but it's genuinely one of the most powerful things a family can start doing right now to start protecting their well being. The second point that I'd really like to talk about is talking about it. I know this comes very difficult for parents and for families, even for adults in general, but parents do this instinctively and they don't want to speak about it to protect their children by not bringing up what happened.
Mhm.
And I completely understand that impulse. It comes from love. But children almost always know more than we think. And silence can actually create more anxiety and not less. You don't have to have all the answers for your child. You can say something as simple as, things have been a little scary recently, and I understand if you're feeling worried. I'm here and you're safe right now.
Mhm.
And that kind of honest conversation is incredibly reassuring to a child as well as to the parents because you're bringing up a safe space where a child can bring up their emotions and their worries to you as well.
Mhm. I imagine that looks a little different too, depending on the children's age, that the
Yeah.
level that you can share and what you're comfortable with
Mhm.
might vary. But I'm sure that the vulnerability that that brings will be comforting to the children to know that you're open about it, you're sharing about it,
Yeah.
and even your feelings on the situation.
Yeah. It's that validation, children look up to parents as, they know the best because this is the situation that they are in. However, when the child sees that parent being vulnerable, telling them, like, I understand that was scary, I felt scared too, but we are safe now. Like, we're back, schools are back, we're building that normality again. You're just bringing up a space where children can feel understood again. And this
Mhm.
is the most important thing as well. I have two more things that we can work on. So the third thing, and I feel strongly about this one, is taking care of yourself as a caregiver. We cannot pour from an empty cup. So when parents are running on stress and exhaustion, it spills over onto the whole family, even when we're doing our absolute best to hide it. So whether that looks like talking to someone, leaning on a friend, or just simply allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling rather than pushing through, that matters. Self-care is going to be one of the most important things everyone in the family can do, specifically the caregivers. And finally, being mindful of news and social media consumption for adults and children alike, actually. So I'm not talking about the children only, I'm talking about everyone in the family. It's very easy to stay glued to updates during uncertain times, but that constant exposure to distressing news keeps our nervous system in a very high state of alert. So, setting some boundaries around that, especially in the evenings and around children, can make a very real difference.
Yeah, I'd love to follow up on both of those. I think they're so
Yeah.
important. Do you think that a lot of the caregivers will have a difficult time with the self-care? Because I think that is usually the first thing, especially in a crisis or post-crisis, that goes away is the ability for that caregiver to take care of themselves. Because as a parent, you're of course going to be putting your children first, and you can do that to a point of exhaustion, depletion of your own resources and abilities. And so I'm sure for a lot of parents and caregivers, that's going to be probably the most challenging of all these well-being strategies you've talked about.
I have no doubt that that's probably the hardest one to implement within our daily routine. Like you said, it's a fight or flight response that happened at that moment. You know, your adrenaline was on the go. You were there to protect. You were on survival mode and protection mode for your children. And now that things are kind of, you know, slowly transitioning back, we're slowly trying to find that balance again. This is where we're going to feel that exhaustion. We gave our all. We were fueling up in a way that we may not have done that before. And now that things are slowly slowing back, we will feel it very
Mm-hmm.
easily, right? So it's going to be very normal for for caregivers to kind of start to feeling like they have less energy than before. They're getting more tired easily, and this is where it's going to be very important to kind of take that step and be like, okay, these are all signs that I'm pouring from an empty cup. A
Mm-hmm.
car cannot run low on gas. I need to fuel up, and that is self care. If it's a few hours when the kids are asleep, where you're reading a book, you're taking like a nice bath, you're doing
Mm-hmm.
some skincare, anything like that, where you're just taking a few moments throughout the day just for yourself to remind yourself that I matter too here.
Mm-hmm. I
That's
love that.
going
I
to
love
be
those
very,
examples of how
yeah,
you can fit it in without it feeling overwhelming to try to leave the home and do something different. Or, yeah, it's just
yeah,
making those mindful moments, taking a few minutes for yourself
yeah,
where you can do something that makes you feel good, makes you feel like yourself again. Yeah,
yeah.
those are wonderful. Those are wonderful. And I think we could all always use a little less time on social media. So I think
Oh,
that's a great point
yes.
as well. And I think that is probably a challenge for a lot of parents and a topic for a whole
Yeah.
other podcast. So,
I agree.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
just
it
think.
could be like a game, you know, that they do
Mhm.
together as a family, if especially with older children around, right? Where they have access to social media and to phones and everything, where it's like, all right, you have no phone zones in the house, where it's let's say, a few hours before bedtime, when you're during meals, you're kind of making it very intentional that there are times where it's no phones. And what
Mhm.
we're discussing is not about the news. We're discussing something new. We're making it just a bit of a game for them to help motivate, because it isn't easy for both of them, both children and adults, to kind of be like, all right, I can not know what's happening right now.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, that's a little bit of a control thing, right? And knowing maybe to being over-informed, you feel like you're kind of
Yeah.
controlling that, but that's a great example as well. I think that's fantastic. All of these truly are excellent examples and excellent things for families to consider. And I also think they really highlight the support, education interventions that we aim to deliver through our child and family well-being program.
Yeah.
Now, for those who may be less familiar with the program, could you walk us through some of the support that the program offers and how it could help families find stability and resilience in critical moments like this?
Yeah, of course. And I'm really glad we have a moment to talk about this because um, the Child and Family Wellbeing Program essentially exists to support exactly what we've been talking about today. It recognizes something that I think most parents intuitively knows. And, they know that what happens at home affects their work and what happens at work affects their home, and they're not separate. So this program is designed to hold and support both. What we do here is we create that safe space for the caregivers to reach out and just speak about what's been happening. They understand that things may feel different at home, and they just need support, providing support to their families and to their children, whether that looks like providing support individually to their children or providing support as a family through like referral to counseling and all of that. This is something the program can help. We work with families across all ages and stages, whether you have a toddler who's suddenly not sleeping, a school-age child who seems anxious, a teenager who's pulled away, or the family just seems unbalanced. Each situation is going to be different, but this is what the support is going to do. We come in through a holistic approach to this situation, and we provide different support to the different families. It's not only for families who were in the crisis, but it is just, in fact, it's the families who benefit the most are those who reach out when before things become unmanageable,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is what the program is for.
Wonderful. I love that. I think it's so important as well, that there's so many facets to the program. You
Mhm.
have the part where you're supporting the direct mental health of the child or children and family. You also
Mhm.
have that practical part where you're able to kind of provide those additional care coaching supports, care planning supports, and resources. And then,
Yeah,
of course, that case management, because for a lot of families, clinical mental health counseling can feel scary. It can feel uncertain. And so someone to bridge those and make sure everyone understands the goals of what we're doing, how to apply techniques and things that we're learning at home, and that everyone feels very supported throughout that process,
definitely.
I think is invaluable.
Definitely. I really agree. Our case managers, the care coaches, every uh, sub program within our child and family well-being program is designed to ensure that the between the adults, the caregivers, the families, the children, we are providing all the support and the safe space that they need, whether it's just to speak to one of our case managers or experts in the child and family well-being program, or it's to get that referral or a care coach, anything that they need. This is where we come in. And I feel like this is, the support like this can make a real difference and that families don't have to navigate this alone.
Hmm. Thank you so much for that. This has been such an eye-opening discussion on such an important topic. Thank you so much, Marianne, for joining me today and sharing your insights with us. And thank you, as always, to our listeners who are tuning in. We hope this conversation helps families feel more informed and better equipped to navigate the challenges that are still ahead. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about our child and family well-being program or other ways we can help families thrive, visit us at www.workplaceoptions.com to view our full scope of services and connect with our team. Until then, thank you for listening and take care.